Welcome back and thanks so much for staying with Sunrise live on E! Now, struggle stalwart, academic and businesswoman Dr. Mamphela Ramphele will officially launch her political party this coming Saturday in Tshwane. Dr. Ramphele, an academic and former World Bank managing director, also co-founded the Black Consciousness alongside Steve Bantu Biko. Now, to talk about the manifesto and exactly the desires, the vision and the mission of Agang, we're joined by Agang leader Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. Also to help us dissect exactly whether the political platform has room for a new kid on the block, we have Professor Dinyiko Maluleke, a political analyst. We invite you to join in this conversation on 011-537-9337 or 9338. We're on Facebook and Twitter as well. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you. So is this essentially a dream come true for you, the daunting task of making that leap of faith to say, I'm going to now actively do something about the situation in South African politics?
It's not a question of a dream come true. It is a call answered, because I am doing what I'm doing, which is found and launch Agang, because our country is at a crossroads. If we continue on the path we are on right now, we are going to undermine all of the beautiful gains that we made since 1994, because without living the founding values of our Constitution, human dignity, equality and freedom, we cannot call ourselves a truly constitutional democracy.
Professor Maluleke, and this is a very exciting time in the history of South Africa, the fact that we have active citizenship and a very sophisticated and vociferous voting public that are no longer satisfied with the mundane or the mediocrity of necessarily voting based on sentiment. Are we seeing a shift in the voters' mind that now questions whether the public bearers or office bearers are delivering on their promise and not necessarily voting based on emotion?
I think you are right. I think we have reached a stage where we are way beyond the honeymoon as South Africans. I think South Africans are restless. They are tired, if you like, of listening to rhetoric. That's why we have so many service delivery protests. That's why we have so many people calling in on talk shows, and people are disagreeable. I mean, so it is a very conducive atmosphere, if you like, for political discourse. There is a hunger for alternatives, and the few political parties that are coming into the fray will certainly have a lot of room and a lot of possible engagement with people and their aspirations, because they are restless.
Yeah, but is there and I know that you launched, or the announcement was made about the political platform in February already, based on the very virtues and ideals that you speak about of a South Africa that's non-racist, non-sexist, and that is free for all to live in and be rewarded from the wealth. But with the roadshows that you've been doing, engaging with community members at their level of, be it adversity or whatever circumstances that they're going through, what is the feedback that you've put together?
The feedback from Dansani, Bochum, Linyenye is similar. People are tired of waiting for the fruits of freedom. They are tired of being lied to. They are tired of watching corruption steal textbooks from their children, steal even old age pensions from old people, steal drugs from people living with HIV/AIDS and diabetes, and steal the lives of women and children who are dying in larger and larger numbers in our hospitals and clinics. People can make the connection between their poor circumstances and a failure of governance and a lack of integrity in public life.
And that would inform your manifesto in the promise that you will give the South African voters. I beg your pardon, before you respond, let's quickly take a caller. I don't want to lose Vusi. Hello, thanks for calling in. And what's your question or comment, Vusi?
Good Good morning, Sina. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, good. My question is, we had COPE a couple of years ago before the general elections, and they promised us a lot of things. And what would be different with Agang in terms of service delivery, and how would it be different, especially with the manifesto also? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vusi. Dr. Ramphele.
Agang is not promising delivering anything. Agang starts from empowering citizens. Citizens are entitled to high quality public services. We have to move out of the passive waiting for something to be delivered to being citizens who demand our rights and who exercise our responsibilities. And so what's going to be different is Agang starts from empowering citizens, which is why we have been listening to citizens. Second, Agang is going to make sure we've got a professional, meritocratic public service as the Constitution demands. So we have people who know what they're doing in the economy, in education, in health, and in safety and security. Agang is going to have zero tolerance on corruption. No public servant is going to do business with the government. And Agang is going to use the known technology and innovation to make sure that all of what we do is at a high standard. We must elevate expectations of ourselves and of our country.
Professor Malu, like, would you say that the temptation to use COPE, for instance, as possibly one of few who deviated from the flock for whatever reason to start their own party, that we have the temptation now to use that almost as a benchmark to say, if this has happened with COPE, what is the likelihood of the survival of any other new party to the scene?
Yeah, well, I think that happens. It's a bit unfair, you know, to use COPE for everyone, but we are human. This country has been around for nearly 20 years as a democracy. We don't have too many examples with which to work, so we tend to look for the few that we have. But I think there are clear differences between Agang and COPE. I mean, Agang is not a breakaway from the ANC. Agang is not being born out of some disgruntlement from inside the bosom of the ruling party. And I think of the 3 or 4 new political parties being touted, it probably is the brightest star, has got the greatest potential among them. Very, very credible leader in Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. Of course, the challenges are there, you know. Will they get the numbers? Will they be able to have the foot soldiers who will walk from door to door, from village to village, from town to town? You know, will they sell us a vision that is able to grab the imagination?
And once all is said and done, when it comes to the ballot box itself, things may change because, you know, you find yourself just in a private space. So that can't, it may not necessarily translate into numbers. It could go either way. But I quickly just want to take messages on Facebook. And Kirsten in Cape Town, we see you as well. Over to you, Ayanda.
Thanks, Indina. On our Facebook page, we asked our viewers at home what their views were on the new political party, Agang, and of course, as vocal as they are, here's the manner in which they commented. Fatwani says, I think it is good for the country because the ANC leadership government, we are going to be like an all-African state. Gobizoto Gabriel says, it's good to see a woman grow into the male-dominated mafia, but I don't think that she will make it. Xabiso Ntuli says, SA politics seems to be about power and control more than it is about change. I'm just saying, is she about change or is it paper change? Anelo Nono is commenting directly here to Dr. Mamphela saying, I read about your organization and to me it's an ANC revised document. I think the revival of BCM would stand, which is Black Consciousness Movement, government would stand a better chance in this ignorance-filled country. Tsepo says, good thoughts, but they must both come and show us what they have got. Moving down to a comment here by Luambo. Luambo says, maybe she will remind people of Steve Biko and other youth who died on the streets for freedom, and all the credit going to those who were safely locked in prison. COPE has failed masses, and maybe Agang will be an alternative to those fed up with the ANC. Here Reagan says why is she doing things behind closed doors? Makes me wonder just how active she will be. But yes, let's hope she comes with less corruption and will decrease the strikes. Lefa just sends a simple message of good luck. And lastly, Mduduzi says, I think that the ANC will finally have competition. Very vocal of viewers there at home, and those are some of our comments coming through. It's back to you, Cindy.
Much appreciated, Ayanda. Thanks so much. Kirsten in Cape Town, thanks for calling, and Clayton will come immediately to you. Hi, Kirsten.
Good morning to you and your viewers. Dr. Mamphela Ramphele, she's got good ideas and good qualities, but she's good as a political analyst. At her age, if she enters this political party, I don't think she will make those ideas she got. She's going to be with someone who doesn't have the she has. She's got so much quality that she can make.
Yeah, Kirsten, sorry, your line is terrible. We can barely hear you. Please move around a bit and hopefully ring us back. Clayton, hello to you. You're calling from Mahikeng. Hi, Clayton.
I am, yes, and good morning.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's nice to see new faces in a political.
Yes, we're listening.
Scene.
Yeah, please turn down your TV set, Clayton. It's giving us a delayed
Okay, I'll actually switch
response.
it off.
Yeah,
It's off
okay.
now.
All right, go ahead.
All right, well, what I'd like to say is morning, everybody, and it's nice to see new faces in the political scene. Apartheid was stealing from the poor. Corruption is stealing from the poor. So we got the same crime with just new hypocrites. And I'd like to know from the doctor, does she have any plans in stamping out the scourge of corruption that's killing our country?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Clayton. And while you're at it, Dr. Ramphele, just to look at the other national strategy key points or priorities, safety and security, the issue around the economy, unemployment, especially amongst the youth, health insurance, etc. If you can just cover those, please.
We are in an unfortunate situation with a very good base in terms of a young population. But because we have failed to develop an education system that is excellent in terms of quality and that provides opportunities for all young people to have proper classrooms, proper libraries, laboratories, and other facilities, including sporting facilities, we are generating poverty out of our classrooms. So young people who are the majority population, 60% of South Africa is below the age of 35, find themselves as the largest unemployed population. And so Agang's first task is to make sure that those young people whose dreams have been quashed are brought back into the system in terms of on-the-job training. We have the money, we have the companies that can be incentivized to train them so that we can get the country working again. And second, in terms of the economy, we believe that the economy of South Africa is lagging behind because of lack of skills, but also because we've got very old ways of doing things, whether it's in mining, whether it's in agriculture, and we are neglecting the services sector, which is the largest sector in South Africa. So we are going to be having an important summit to deal with the economic challenges so that we can bring government and the business community and citizens together to tackle the problem of a stagnant economy. We have to tackle the question of our healthcare system, which is failing poor people, women and children particularly. I have never seen so many women die in childbirth as we are having right now. And this is not because of lack of knowledge. It is neglect, it is failure of leadership. The same thing with police brutality and actually exposing police to working environments which are not human. Good policemen are there in our system, but what is missing is leadership and giving support to our police system.
All right, let's talk about the tipping point or the turnaround, if one could put a timeline to it, because you could argue that we have been developing a nanny state or even a welfare state, some had been saying, for the past 20 years or so, where provision had largely come from government, be it your shelter or basic amenities, electricity and water, etc. So now when we're saying that we're empowering the very citizens who are ill-equipped when it comes to education, by your own admission, that do not necessarily have skills, they're pretty much in the peripheral, they are subjected to a life of insignificance, and there isn't a radical change in policy. How do we achieve all these ideals, Professor Maluleke?
Look, I think that there are far too many challenges to cover in a short time, but certainly the economic challenges are primary. I think that a political party that is going to help South Africans meet the economic challenges is certainly going to be touching the right area. The lack of jobs, the economy that is not growing, or even when it grows, it's not producing jobs. These are the issues that must be addressed. But I think the other area is the area of just South Africans are looking for integrity in their leaders. They are looking for leaders who say what they mean and mean what they say, who can be trusted. And I think that there's an advert out there that says leaders wanted with integrity. And I think that if Agang can respond to that advert, South Africans will be happy. Of course, you know, getting people to accept your ideas, to be taken up with them is one thing. Getting them to vote for you is another. And there's a lot of work to be done. But certainly there is room for change out there.
Okay, and looking at that change, starting perhaps with this egalitarian kind of society that we want, we know that the most contentious issue is around the economy and inclusion of or greater participation for all. So how do we deal with the issue of land redistribution and ensuring that we move away from the politics, but essentially to allow this land to feed all that live in it?
You know, the greatest landowner is the state. And the sad part is our government doesn't even know how much land it owns. And therefore, it has not leveraged that ownership to make sure that we deal with the legacy of apartheid's geography. We continue to build houses for poor people furthest away from the city. We continue to live with a migrant labor system from the Eastern Cape, one of the richest provinces in terms of the soil. And the land there belongs to the state and is held in different forms, particularly the issue of traditional land ownership. We have not been imaginative in dealing with land ownership. And of course, even where we have succeeded in redistributing land or creating restitution, we have not followed through with support for the people who now own the land, so that the land becomes productive and is of value to the new owners. So there is a lot of work to be done. The issue of integrity goes to the heart of it. When you look at how many MPs and cabinet ministers own land, then you understand why we have not made much of progress in terms of land ownership. We have to have integrity in public life, which is why Agang is going to lead by example. I'm going to have my affairs, financial and otherwise, put on the web so that people know what do I own. And we don't believe that you can be in public life and also be in business. You've got to remove all perceived conflicts of interest.
Yeah, we know that you have to run, Dr. Ramphele, but just quickly talking about the Africa Education Week, where you'll be delivering a keynote address, and also the launch this coming Saturday, what to anticipate And Professor Maluleke, I suppose you have very little criticism for Agang. Everything on paper, on the surface, seems very promising. But do you have any areas where you think it's a little bit too soon, perhaps? Is the voting public ready? Is there still fear and division within our politics that could perhaps hinder the inclusion of new parties? I'll start with you.
Yeah, look, I mean, we don't have a track record for Agang. We don't have any numbers to compare because it's a new party. I think my only concern would be that Agang is being launched a little late, at least in relation to next year's elections. There is not sufficient time, it seems to me. But it depends what the plan is. So I am looking forward to the launch date so that I can understand the plan and what can be done. But maybe next year's elections are not the be-all and end-all. Maybe there is a longer-term plan that Agang has. That's my only concern. And of course, the issues I was raising earlier, you know, where are the foot soldiers? Because Agang must be established in places. It must have a presence everywhere. And unless it does that, it might struggle.
All right, I'm running late for news. We have to take an ad break. We're speaking to Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. She is the leader of Agang. They will be launching this coming Saturday, the 22nd of June. Political analyst, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke from UNISA, joining us for that discussion. We're back after this. Stay with us.